Well, it's late October. I'm here with Justin. We're out at Blooming Junction in your garden. And speaking of garden, it's transition time for our garden. So, Justin, what do we need to be doing in our gardens this time of year?
That's right. Right now we're thinking about preparing for winter. And doing some of these steps right now, preparing for winter, can really make a big difference in the success that we'll have in the following year. And I sort of have 5 major things that I like to think about this time of year. First one, and I think is the most important, is making sure that we get rid of all of our old plant material and growth from this year. Because it can be a spot where a lot of diseases and pests can overwinter. Right. And so getting those out of the garden now is really going to help us for spring. And so a lot of those things, healthy vegetables, material can be composted. Okay. But if you have things that are really diseased, or if you have a lot of pest pressure, you're going to make sure that you either burn those if you can burn in your area, or dispose of them with your household waste.
Right, because we leave those in the garden, it's just going to spread that disease and pest onto the next crop.
Exactly, yeah, like powdery mildew, if you have aphid problems, a lot of bugs will leave their eggs, in that material, and so getting it out is going to help us quite a bit. Okay. Second thing we want to think about is weed and pest removal. So I like to go through, remove all of perennial weeds. I like to pull them by hand. You can use a hoe, but the important thing to think about in the fall is if we're doing that, do it on a very sunny day. Right. Because otherwise a lot of those are just going to reroot and we're going to have the same problem.
You just mix it back in the soil and it's just going to
all over again. And then I also, as you're hoeing, I like to look for cutworms or slugs. And if you have raised beds, they like to hide out, right along the edge there. But fall, usually October and November, is sort of mating season for slugs. And so if we kind of get them under control now, they won't be as much of a problem in the spring.
So continue using that bait.
Yep, absolutely. We use Sluggo here, and it's extremely effective for us. So yeah, taking care of slugs. And then third, I like to say test and amend. It's the only way we're going to know exactly what's going on in our soil is by getting a soil test done. And I think a lot of people think that it's really complicated or hard to do, but it's super easy. And if you pop into any garden center, they can give you some instruction and help you figure that out. And then, that'll tell us whether we need to add things like lime to help adjust our pH, which can take a long time to take effect. So it's nice to know what's going on in your soil, and you can add amendments in the fall. That way the winter rains will help them to penetrate into the soil, and the soil microorganisms will start to break them down and make them more available for plants in the spring. So we got test and amend, and then I like to recommend for home gardeners that we always top dress with something after all that. We've cleaned up, we got all the weeds out, we've amended, and then at the end we can top dress with something, and that's going to help to suppress weeds. And I'm a big fan of feeding the soil, not the plant. And so when we add compost or manure in the fall, we're feeding our soil, and all the microorganisms and things will break that down and make it available to our plants in the spring. Also helps with water retention, and things like that as well. And the last thing I recommend everybody do, and we all say, oh, I'm going to remember what I did. I'll totally remember in the spring, but we all forget. So in the fall, when it's still somewhat fresh, take notes of what worked for you, what didn't, what varieties worked. Did you harvest too much at this time, too little? Take great notes. So that
what varieties worked and didn't work.
Exactly.
So, and we get a lot of people that, it's fall and people think of fall veggies and they try to go plant them now, but now they should have been planting them a while ago.
Correct.
But you guys have already planted a lot of that and have a lot in your farm store. So let's head over to the farm store and show us kind of the fall veggies that you guys have for sale now.
Let's take a look.
Okay. So even though, we have our gardens are all kind of ripped out, you guys, still have your farm stand, and there's still lots of great fall produce that you can purchase out here.
That's right. Yeah, you can see the tons of winter squash we have, all the great fall fruit, apples, pears, greens from our garden still, and we'll have all the traditional fixings for Thanksgiving too.
Which is great. So, you can come out to the nursery here, the farm stand is open. There's lots of fresh produce. You guys will be open through the end of the year, and even all the holiday items. So, that's right. So Justin, it's always a pleasure to be out here, for all the tips on what to do in our garden. And so come on out to Blooming Junction, come out to the farm stand, and it's been a pleasure. We appreciate being out here.
Thanks so much.